always taking action for you.
Good evening, everyone. GM's leader is in the hot seat. Mary Barra apologizing for ignition switch dangers and promising to resolve the problem.
On Capitol Hill today, she faced a barrage of tough questions from House members and the media as well just a few moments ago, demanding answers about that massive recall.
We have Team 7 coverage of her testimony, including Ross Jones in Washington. Let's begin, though, live in the newsroom with 7 Action News reporter Heather Catallo. Heather.
Well, Mary Barra tried to hold her ground as her company took a beating on Capitol Hill. She made it clear under oath that GM's top leadership did not know about the faulty ignition switches until just a few months ago. And she said to her knowledge that her predecessor was not aware of the bad parts. But instead of answering many of the questions, Barra often had to say that she needs to wait for the results of her internal investigation that's being conducted by former U.S. Attorney Anton Valukas. As dozens of cameras flashed and as the world watched, congressional leaders demanded answers from General Motors' new CEO Mary Barra about the automaker's decade-long delay in issuing a recall for millions of cars.
What we have here is a failure to communicate, and the results were deadly.
GM submitted early warning reports to NHTSA, including data about crashes in the recalled cars. With all that information available, why did it take so long to issue the recall?
GM knew about the defect in the ignition switches as far back as 2001, 13 years before the recall, correct? Yes or no will work.
The investigation will tell us that.
The House Subcommittee on Energy and Commerce is investigating the ignition switch failures in GM cars that are tied to at least 13 deaths. Congress now knows that GM was using a part that failed to meet its own specifications.
How many parts are being used in General Motors product that don't meet your own company specifications?
I don't have that exact number, but I can tell you the parts that we're using today meet the performance and the reliability, the safety that they need to. If we find we have a part that is defective, that doesn't meet the requirements, we then do a recall.
Well, again, that's not an acceptable answer, I think, to the American people.
Do you think there was a cover-up or it was sloppy work?
That is the question I've asked Mr. Valukas to uncover, and I'm anxiously awaiting the results from his study.
Some committee members hit Barra hard with the allegations that General Motors did not change the faulty ignition switches to save money.
When GM concluded, and you heard from my opening statement, that the tooling cost and price pieces are too high, what does that mean?
I find that statement to be very disturbing as we do this investigation and understand it in the context of the whole timeline. If that was the reason the decision was made, that is unacceptable. That is not the way we do business in today's GM.
Barra took questions for about 2 hours, but she's not done yet. She will have to answer more questions in front of a Senate committee tomorrow. Reporting live in the newsroom, I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News. Jeff and Joanne, back to you.
Okay, Heather, thank you.
7 investigator Jim Kurtzner is in Warren now. That's another GM town with a lot riding on the company.
Jim, you watched that testimony today with the owner of one of those recalled vehicles. What was their reaction today?
Maria Dragna lives here in the shadows of the GM Tech Center in Warren. She just got this recall notice for a GM car she no longer owns. She got rid of it because of trouble the company and the dealer either could not or would not fix.
I would never buy another GM product, and I realize they all have defects, and there's problems with all the manufacturers.
She watched with her mother, whom she used to drive in a 2006 Saturn Ion she owned with ignition switch trouble. She sold it after several trips to the dealer, who told her at 5'6" she was too tall and hitting the switch with her knee. She says she feels lucky her trouble wasn't worse.
First of all, I'm grateful that I'm not one of the pictures that were hanging on their mantle there, because that could have been the case, definitely. But I don't know what they could do for me.
She watched with the intent to hear solid answers from the new CEO, who broke the glass ceiling this year. She heard the apology, but not much more.
I actually was awake a lot during the night last night thinking about this, and I thought, you know, maybe so many people are saying, gosh, I feel sorry for her walking into this situation. And my gut feeling is that they knew this situation was coming down. I was shocked. She didn't seem well prepared. I thought she'd be more prepared than that. And I think they asked really good questions, and they are determined to resolve this and hold GM accountable for it.
And Mary says Mary Barra has to prove that the buck stops with her and that General Motors does everything it can to make sure no one else is seriously injured or killed in one of these cars. I'm live in Warren, Jim Kurtzner, 7 Action News.
Okay, Jim, thank you. Now to Washington, D.C. Our team coverage continues with 7 investigator Ross Jones live on Capitol Hill.
Ross, you were in that hearing, and reporters just got a chance to talk to Barra. What did she have to say?
Mary Barra just finished up talking with reporters. We were waiting for her for about 20 minutes. Once her testimony was over, it took a very long time for her to come out. And just like she did inside that hearing room, she said she did not know too many questions, frankly, too many questions, I think, that reporters were asking her. She said and reiterated that she did not know if General Motors would be compensating any of the victims, the 12 dead and their families, or anyone who was injured but survived these crashes. That determination has not yet been made. She said she wasn't sure why General Motors, and her specifically, was not aware of this until just December, even though she was head of quality for General Motors in 2011 when some of these cars were still being produced, these faulty ignitions were still being in those cars. She was in charge of quality for every GM car in the world, and she still says, if she's being honest, she had no idea about this defect in these ignitions. We can give you now just a quick piece of video we've turned around from that press conference with reporters. Let's play it now.
And we will hold ourselves accountable. And then finally, we will be transparent as we learn anything that we can bring forward that is going to improve the safety of our vehicles and make the whole industry better. We will definitely share all those things, and we will be transparent.
Now, Barra said she will be coming back tomorrow to talk to the Senate. She will not be taking any questions from reporters, we've been told, which should not come as much as a surprise because she didn't have many answers for them today. Our coverage continues on 7 Action News at 6. For now, Ross Jones, live on Capitol Hill.
All right, Ross, thanks so much.
Let's take a few minutes now to look at today's testimony from a crisis management perspective.
Local PR expert Don Tanner of Tanner Friedman is in the newsroom now. Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. If you had to give Mary Barra a grade today from the public relations perspective, what would it be?
I'm sorry, I couldn't pick up the volume on that.
Can you hear us now, Don?
Don, can you hear us?
I can now, yes.
I was just asking if you could give Mary a grade today from the public relations perspective for the job that Barra did on Capitol Hill before Congress, what would it be?
I would say a B+. She was really thrown into the fire today. Almost 3 hours of testimony, and it was tough. I think overall she came in, looked stiff at first and very nervous, but seemed to calm down. Was able to show sympathy when she needed to, show resolve, and I think get her points across very, very well, and at times very adverse questions coming her way.
Okay, Don, so what do they do from a PR perspective going forward? I mean, there needs to be something done to end this crisis for GM. What do you think? Transparency has got to be one of them.
Absolutely, transparency, and she continued to refer throughout the testimony to the report, the private report, the investigation that's going on. And I think what's going to be important is what comes out of that investigation, what the findings are, who is responsible. You know, Mary has said that the buck stops here with me. We are changing our culture. We're going to change our processes. We're looking at our people.
Don, I want to ask you a question though about that report, because she did make, mention over and over about the changes that have already been in place. But I think a lot of people were surprised that she didn't know more about the investigation at this point. She said they learned about this at the end of January. It's been 2 solid months. Why always pushing it off to this investigation? I think some people find it hard to believe that she didn't know more of what's in that investigation to this point.
Well, all we can go by is what she said. Some people are going to say that without a doubt. She said, I knew about this a little bit in December and then also in January. She did come forth and say some things are already changing. For the first time, GM is going to have a vice president of safety, of global vehicle safety. She also mentioned that a compensation expert has been hired to help, and somebody that worked with in the aftermath of 9/11 and BP. That's somebody that's now consulting with GM. So there are times, yeah, maybe she referenced the investigation a bit too much, but it is what it is, and she again did bring some new news to the forefront.
Yeah. Okay. Don Tanner of Tanner Friedman, thank you tonight.